It's time to talk law. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay. With us each and every Thursday, she brings her legal expertise with her. She provides some general advice on the latest hot topics. She has experience that spans more than 25 years in areas including property and commercial law. She also prepares wills as part of estate planning and litigation. With us once again. Hi, Despina.
Hi, Wayne. Hi, Brooke.
Good morning, Desi. We're kicking off. Shut up, Wayne.
I dropped my pen. Okay, we'll pick it up from there.
Good morning, Despina. We're kicking off this morning with quite a controversial case. A Queensland court has overturned a law banning religious knives on school grounds. Despina, can you talk us through this case?
Yeah, it's pretty controversial, isn't it? So when I read this article recently, I thought, oh, this is a story to tell the listeners. And when I say story, well, it's a real life story of something that's just happened in Queensland. And we want to talk a little bit about how this came about. And we're going to talk about the Constitution, which I love. And we don't get those opportunities very much, do we, on the show? I mean, because we don't often have issues that affect the Constitution on a daily basis like we have with other laws. But this involves the Constitution of Australia and it involves Queensland state laws. So it's very interesting, and I think everybody should listen up, and potentially we want to see if it's going to open up the floodgates in the future. So there was a decision made in the Supreme Court in Queensland last year. I think it was around August or September. And there was a ban placed on a particular family or a particular child from a family. And that ban was that child couldn't carry a particular knife to school, right? And that ban was done under a state law. And it's Section 51, subbracket 5 of the Weapons Act in Queensland. And that's an act from 1990. And what that section says is that there is not a reasonable excuse to physically possess a knife in a school for genuine religious purposes, right? So on that basis of that state law, that child was banned. So the Supreme Court said, no, Section 51 of the Weapons Act says this, you can't just carry a knife based on religious grounds. Now, interestingly, the family took it to the Court of Appeal and it was overturned recently. Yeah. Yeah. So what does that mean? And how it was overturned was interesting. So we want to talk about the state and federal comparison. So we've got state laws in Australia, but then we've got a really interesting section in the Constitution, which we've always had, and it's Section 109 of the Constitution. And what that section says is that when a law of a state is inconsistent with the law of the Commonwealth, then the Commonwealth prevails, right? And it'll prevail and the former law shall be invalid to the extent of that inconsistency. So, and what inconsistency are we talking about? Because we just said, well, we've got a state law that says you can't.
Knives.
Exactly. So, no, we've got Section 10 of the Racial Discrimination Act, okay? And that is a Commonwealth Act. So you've got a state law and you've got a Commonwealth law, right? And let's talk about what Section 10 says first, and then we'll go back to the Constitution. So you've got the Weapons Act in Queensland, which says, no, can't carry a knife based on religious grounds. Section 10 of the Racial Discrimination Act says something different. And what it says is that under that section, you do have the right to freedom of movement and you do have the right and freedom of religion. And what this family did is that they used Section 10 and said, well, this is racial discrimination and you can't do that. And it's a Commonwealth law, it overrides the state law. And they actually won an appeal. So the net effect of that, of course, is that this particular child, and we want to talk about the religion, etc., just a little bit to get some perspective, that child can now carry what's called, as I understand, it's called a kirpan. And a kirpan is a particular knife in their religious faith. And that child can actually carry that. And it is a weapon of some description. I mean, I'm not familiar with how blunt or how sharp the blade is on a kirpan, but it is a knife. And now that child is actually allowed to carry that to school. And when you think about that concept, it's pretty, in some respects horrendous.
So we're talking about a child here. So we're talking about is a primary school or high school age child who is allowed to bring a knife onto school grounds and they're using the religious exemption as a way to do that.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, it opens I guess a possible can of worms here, because the question is, how far do you go? Because there are other, well, I'm thinking particularly using Aboriginal people as an example. I mean, Aboriginal people use spears, and they use, to hunt. It's a very basic part of their everyday life. I mean, could an Aboriginal person, for example, say, okay, well, using this, it's something as part of our culture, our everyday, something we would use every day for our food collection. Can I bring a spear to school?
Well, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? And I'm no expert on Aboriginal laws and Aboriginal way of life or Aboriginal faith. So I can't really comment on that. What I can say is it's an interesting concept that you put out there because, and I'm not an expert on Sikhism, which is the faith that they're talking about. And apparently it's the world's 5th largest religion. And most people that practice this faith come from India. So, and there are some people obviously in Australia that are from this particular religion or practice this religion and faith. But it's an interesting concept because, as I understand, they went on appeal and pushed for this because it's part of who they are, part of who they are spiritually, part of the religion, that they must carry or wear 5 things. And one of those 5 things is this kirpan. But it really does open up the door, doesn't it, to other possibilities about other people out there of different races and different religions are saying, well, my faith says this. So why can't I carry also a weapon to school because the faith says that? Well, you'd have to prove that quite extensively, I would have thought. And you'd have to go through quite a few hoops, as this family did.
Yeah.
And it took them another year to get this decision, I think, on appeal. But look, they were saying things in the court. For example, this law, the Weapons Act, is a law that prevents persons of particular race from attending the school, which then impinges upon the broader rights to religion, freedom of religion, freedom of movement. And they were comparing it to, well, a child may go to school with a paring knife to cut fruit. Child may go to school with a pocket knife. There's no ban on that. So why are you banning someone based on their faith? And that's where their angle was. But, we practically, do children take pocket knives to school? Maybe they do.
And that's
do
banned
children take paring knives?
Pocket knives are banned. But yeah, for instance, like scissors, obviously a lot of kids have scissors in their pencil case and no one's measuring how sharp scissors are. So yeah, the floodgates are opened now. So what do you think would happen next, Despina? Do you think this could be, or should it be, a high court case?
Well, potentially, yes. Potentially. And of course, there's scope there because they've gone to the Court of Appeal. It's not the highest court in the land. The High Court is. So if there was scope there for further appeals, yes, they could go to the High Court, and it would be within their jurisdiction, I would have thought, because it's based on the Constitution, that they would be able to hear this case. But maybe it would take another type of similar case using this one that's now been determined, that would, require it to go to the High Court, because there's someone else, there's another scenario, in the future, another circumstance where someone's using this case to say, yes, but based on this case and the Court of Appeal decision, I want to do this as part of my faith. So we're going to have to, I think, wait and see to see what happens with this outcome and how it's going to play out in Queensland and potentially other states of Australia as well.
So interesting. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you so much for that report, Despina. And coming up next, what if you're getting ready to settle on your dream home and there's flood or fire damage to your property? Can you get out of the contract? Despina has the answer for you coming up on Talking Law in just a moment.
Are you confused about legal jargon? Do you need legal advice but don't know where to turn? Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97. Despina, a leading lawyer with over 20 years of experience, will demystify the law and provide practical advice to help you navigate legal issues. Whether it's a family matter, a property dispute, or a business concern, Talking Law has got you covered. Don't miss out on this valuable resource. Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97.